I would say go in for the wild ride. Just expect, just sort of like, it's the final girl who survives the horrible, horrible horror movie. I 1000% so there's just something that's up. Something maybe not so right going on there. So, okay. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today we're going to talk about the books that I read in June, and I read 6 books. So not my biggest reading month per se, but I read a lot of good books. So I definitely feel like quality outweighs quantity. And let's just jump on in because I have lots of things to say. So if you guys follow me on Instagram, I feel like most of these books are not going to be a surprise, but it's not supposed to be, so it's totally fine. But I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid and I loved it. This was one of my most anticipated books of the year. I'm such a huge fan of hers and I loved this book, like absolutely 5 stars for me. And I've heard mixed bag on this one and it's totally fine, obviously, subjective, but everything that she writes to me is like a 5-star in a different way. And I realize that probably doesn't make sense when I say it, but there's something in every book, and whether it's the writing or the characters or the story, like I have a very hard time comparing or picking a favorite because to me, each book sort of like serves a different purpose or touches me in a different way or resonates in a different way. And I just loved this book. So this follows 4 siblings, the Rivas. And if you're a huge Taylor Jenkins Reid fan, you've probably heard this by now, but their father, Nick Riva, is a famous musician and he was in Daisy Jones and the Six. He makes a cameo, and then he is also in Evelyn Hugo. He is one of Evelyn Hugo's husbands. So we do get dual timelines in this. So we do get sort of the 50s and 60s when Nick meets his wife, and then we get the 80s, which is present day, with the 4 children who are now sort of in their early 20s. And they basically, since they were younger, have thrown a party at the end of the summer. And it's over the years become the party to end all parties because over the years, the 4 siblings have increasingly become more and more famous. And in this one, this is by the end of the night, they will have burned the house down. And we see sort of hour by hour leading up to, from everything from like 7 o'clock in the morning the day of the party to 7 o'clock in the morning the day after the party. And we get multiple points of view. Like I said, we get multiple timelines. And I just think she so beautifully weaves together the story and the history and the different perspectives of the brothers and sisters. And I just love these characters. Nina is sort of our main protagonist in this. And I love the sibling relationships. There's so much family strife in this. There's parents and children. There's questioning, Nina in particular is questioning her fame. She's a surfer, but she's also a model. She's married to the super famous tennis player. It's very much commentary on sort of celebrity. It's a commentary on fame. It's a very interesting look at the world of fame and celebrity in Hollywood. And I just loved it. I cried. No surprise. I do cry quite often in books. But I just absolutely love her writing. And I mentioned this in another video also. When I was listening to a lot of podcasts she was doing, promoting Daisy Jones and the Six, she was writing Malibu Rising. And she was saying how it was the most ambitious book she had written to date and how she'd really challenged herself. And she was sort of low-key talking about it. And it just increased my interest even more. And obviously, like the psycho stalker, obsessive writer fan that I am, I listened to tons of interviews and podcasts for this. And it just makes me love it even more. And I loved it. I read it super quickly. I thought it was so well done. I can't wait to read it again. Julia Whalen does the audiobook. So if you guys are big fans of hers, like I am, so good. And there was actually an interview, Julia Whalen interviewing Taylor Jenkins Reid on launch night that I'm sure is on YouTube. It was for a bookstore in California. And I just love it. I just absolutely love it. So if you're a fan of hers, I mean, read it, but it's not like Evelyn Hugo, it's not like Daisy Jones, but in my mind, again, all 5 stars. I have read every single one of her books and I just love them all to pieces, but this one did not disappoint me at all. I loved it.
Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today we're going to talk about the books that I read in June, and I read 6 books. So not my like biggest reading month per se, but it's not my
another book that I loved. I finally read my first Jennifer McMahon, and I read The Drowning Kind. This is her most recent book. I talked about how I've been like meaning to read her and hearing great things about her. And I loved this one too. It was like just dark enough, just creepy enough, just weird and mysterious enough. And I really, really love her writing. And again, I went deep down a podcast hole and listened to a whole bunch of interviews with her, and listening to her inspiration for the story and her process. It just makes me love it even more. But you don't need to do that, I think, to love the story or to love her writing. But this is a story also in dual timelines. So this book is about a woman named Jax, and she basically has a hugely dysfunctional relationship with her family, and she has distanced herself, like literally and figuratively moved across the country to kind of get away from it. And her older sister Lexi has had a lot of issues over the years and is sort of increasingly losing touch with reality in some ways, and she's just a lot to handle, and Jax has a hard time handling her. So when the book opens, Jax gets home from work one night, and her sister is basically like rage voicemailing her and just leaving her message after message on her machine. And they get more frenetic, they get more kind of delusional, they get more ragey, and Jax kind of like literally like turns down the volume and is just like, I just can't with you right now. And then the next morning, Jax gets a call from her aunt and finds out that Lexi drowned in the pool in the backyard of her grandmother's house, which is an estate that Lexi inherited after their grandmother passed away. So Jax has to return home, favorite trope, reluctant return home, and is trying to kind of pack up the house, and winds up going through Lexi's things and finds out that Lexi has been sort of looking into the history of this property and this house. And there's kind of some dark and messed up things that maybe totally are going on at this property and the history. So we actually get two timelines in this. So we get 2019 and we get 1929. And we get to see the history of this property, and then we get to see the current day with Lexi. And I would say go in pretty blind. That's all you need to know. Reluctant return home, family secrets, dark and messed up things happening at a property. If you are familiar with Jennifer McMahon's writing, you know there's always some sort of creepy, kind of sinister, suspensey factor to things, ghosty a lot of the times, and just sort of like that dark creep vibe. So I loved it. I love her writing. I am super excited to pick up more of her books. I cannot believe it took me this long to pick up her books. And I feel like I've said this in other videos also, but if you are a writer, she also does great writing content and talks about like her process in podcasts, and like on her Instagram, I follow her, and just how she maps out her books and things like that, which I'm just devouring basically as much as I'm gonna devour her books. But I loved it, not disappointed, gorgeous cover. I think it's totally worth the hype that it's getting. And I had such a fun time with this book. Also ripped through this one super quick. The next book is one I listened to, and it's Let Love Rule by Lenny Kravitz. And he narrates it himself, so I highly recommend the audiobook. I love when the celeb does their own narration. And I've been a big fan of Lenny Kravitz for a long time. Discovered him with Let Love Rule. I wore out my Mama Said CD. I still have it, but we played that on repeat. It was like that, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magik, and Nirvana. Like they all came out at the same time, and we just listened to all of them on rotation. But I was very excited to read this book. I've always been fascinated by him musically, and then his acting career, and I'm not gonna lie, his relationship with Lisa Bonet and his daughter Zoe, and his songwriting, and his family, Roxy Rokers, his mom, and all of it. I find it super interesting. So I very much enjoyed this book, although I didn't realize that it wasn't, I thought it was gonna be, you know, sort of birth to present kind of a thing, but it actually only goes through until when Let Love Rule comes out. So it's his childhood, it's his family, it's his upbringing. It's super interesting. He's super transparent about things, full honesty, really talks about his early career, which I was not aware of. And I mean, when he was writing music and when he was in high school and bands he was in, and I had no idea about his early days. So it was super interesting to me. We do get a lot about his family, his mom, and his relationship with his mother, which is just so beautiful. And I feel like he talks about her so much throughout his career that you get that vibe. And, you know, he talks about the challenges he faced and when he met Lisa Bonet and how they got together and everything. So if you're a fan of his, I think it's just a very interesting book. Again, he narrates it himself. I, of course, have been like listening to Lenny Kravitz again, like on repeat, and I'm excited to hear more about his story. I'm super interested in the writing of Mama Said. It's still hands down my favorite of all of his albums. And yeah, the story continues, but it was one I was interested in. I snagged it from the library and I enjoyed it. So if you guys saw my mid-year freakout tag, you already know about this one also, and it's Final Girls by Riley Sager. This was a reread for me, and actually Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand was gonna read it for the first time for her 5-star prediction, and I was like, I totally wanna read it again. Let's read it together. Our schedules didn't totally align. I kind of plowed through it because I just couldn't stop reading it, but we did have a fun time talking about it. I loved listening to her theories as she was going through the book and thinking like, what's what? And then when she got to the end, I just love it. I love seeing other people's first experiences with books that I totally love. But long story short, this is his first book is Riley Sager, not his first book. Spoiler alert, you guys know that's a pen name. So I have raved about this book before, and it is still hands down my favorite Riley Sager book. I haven't read Survive the Night yet. It is in the mail. I cannot wait for it to come. But I have to say, I loved this even more the second time round because I feel like, A, I had so much more appreciation for it because I knew what was coming. So from like a writing, plot, clue kind of a way, and red herrings and all that good stuff. Like I totally was like, oh, this is even smarter than I remember the first time. And I also I love the writing, I love the characters, and I love the story. I just think it's such a good book. So this is about 3 girls who are the final girls, and in the horror movie trope, they're the ones who survived the horrible, horrible massacre. So it's Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, it's Neve Campbell / Sidney Prescott in Scream, and our main character here is a girl named Quincy, and when she was in college, she and her friends went to a cabin for the weekend, which like, ugh, a cabin in the woods, you know nothing good is coming out of that one. And we fast forward kind of 10 years and Quincy has moved on. She's got a job, she's got a fiance, she's got an apartment in New York City, and she gets the news that one of the other final girls, a girl named Lisa, was found dead in her apartment. And that news breaks and it sort of resurrects everything about what happened with Quincy and everything from years past, and its reporters are hounding her and her whole life is basically turned upside down. And the thing with Quincy is she has a big memory gap of what happened the night of. So she knows what she knows, she believes what she believes. She has worked very hard to not remember that night and move on with her life, but she's kind of forced to revisit everything. So we do get 2 timelines, although mostly we're in the present, which I really love. And there's just all sorts of stuff that happens, and it's just so good. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you guys have not read this one, you have to. It's so freaking good. So the next book is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and I actually did the audiobook of this. It's narrated by York Whitaker, and I really enjoyed this book. Audiobook is great. I really love the story. This was another of my most anticipated books of this year, and again, it didn't disappoint. So this book is about a woman named Grace Porter, and she just got her PhD in astronomy. She's 28 years old. She has spent her entire life with like eyes on the prize, doesn't step out of the lines. She was raised by a military dad, and her stepmother gives her 3 tickets to Vegas to celebrate. So she takes her 2 best girlfriends and they go, and the last thing anyone would expect Grace to do is to go and have like a wild drunken weekend, and that's exactly what Grace does. And as if that wasn't enough, when the book opens, she wakes up to basically a note on her nightstand from a woman named Yuki, who is the woman she met the night before and maybe totally kind of married while she was in Vegas. So Grace has kind of blown up her life a little bit, and she doesn't tell anybody that she maybe totally kind of got married. And she goes back to Seattle and tries to kind of live her life and find a job and fall back into who she's supposed to be. But it's really kind of a coming of age story for someone in their late 20s, early 30s, who again has always lived their life with sort of eyes on one prize. And when sort of the life you get or the life you think you wanted doesn't turn out to be what you want it to be, what do you do now? So Grace goes on a journey. She finds Yuki, who lives in New York, and she goes to New York to meet her wife and to try and figure out what her next step is. And I feel like this is kind of pitched as a romance, and there's definitely romance in it, but it's definitely that if you've ever felt lost in life, if you've ever felt like you're not in the right place in your life, if you've ever sort of done everything you were supposed to do and wanted to do and then find yourself wanting something different, it is that journey that she goes on. And there's a lot about her family, her relationship with her father. Her parents got divorced when she was younger. It's the relationship with her mom, her stepmom. She's this incredible group of friends, and it's the support system about how your friends become your family. And then this woman who, you know, she met totally randomly in Vegas, and getting to know Yuki. And then Yuki has this beautiful cast of character friends, not cast of characters, but friends who are a cast of characters in the book. And it's about all of these relationship dynamics. And it's sort of like, you know, do you live up to the expectations that people have set for you? Are you living your life for yourself? Are you living your life for other people? And how to figure out who you are and what you want and what's going to make you happy. So I very much enjoyed this book. There were definitely parts of it that resonated with me. I think about all the times I have felt lost, whether it's been in a career or where I've been living or in friendships or in relationships or anything like that, where you just know it's not right, but you don't know how to get out of it or how to fix it or what to do next or what that right next step is. So I think this is just such a great book. I really loved Grace and Yuki together. I loved both of their friend circles, and again, the friends who become your family. And it just was a fun book, but also emotional, and pretty sure I shed a couple tears on this one too. I'm just such a sucker for a good book. But I totally enjoyed this book, highly recommend it. And again, I feel like this is like the party line for most of the books I've read this month. You can't go wrong. It was such a good book. The next book I read is Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams, and this was also one of my most anticipated books. I'm in a very new releasey kind of a mode right now, and I was able to snag like an auto read from NetGalley on this right before it came out, and I totally enjoyed this book. Like this, I will say, if you've read No Exit, it has the same look and feel of No Exit. So it is that claustrophobic, it's a totally different book, but it's that claustrophobic, small cast of characters, sort of nail-biting, minute-to-minute, moment-to-moment, like insanity. I didn't know what to expect when I read No Exit, which I read at the beginning of this year, and that book went like so dark and messed up, and I was not prepared for it, and similar vibe to this one. So he definitely has a style that's working for him. But in this book, it is about a woman named Lena Nguyen, and her twin sister, Cambry, was found at the bottom of a bridge. And the story is that she jumped, and the police detective who found her reports it, finds her. But Lena feels like something is just not quite right with this story, because not only did her sister send a text message to Lena that night, but there were also 14 failed phone calls to 911. And said police officer who found her at the bottom of the bridge also had pulled her over about an hour earlier for speeding. So there are no coincidences. So Lena is on a mission to find out what happened to her sister. So she goes to meet this detective, police officer, Corporal Raymond Resevic, on the bridge. And basically she's like, we're not getting off this bridge till I find out what really happened to my sister that night. So this is definitely one of those like binge read books. You can like knock it out in a weekend. It's moment to moment, it's fast paced, it's page turny, it's cliffhangers at the end of the chapters, like kind of like all those devices. So I enjoyed it, I totally did. I hope that his next book is not sort of this same formula, and I hate to say that, but I do sometimes get frustrated when authors kind of find, it's like a TV show, if you have like the formula to it and it's sort of like the same story over and over. So again, totally unique story. It's not the same as No Exit, but it does have the same vibe. So I feel like he's found something that works for him, which I'm happy for him. But at the same time, I'm hoping next time maybe we're not just in like the 24-hour time period and we just get to like get more story. But totally worth the read, totally had me. And if you're just in for like a fast-paced thriller, I think you can't go wrong with this one. So that's gonna do it for June. Very good books, super excited. Again, I'm kind of in this new release kick. I am currently reading The Other Black Girl. I have maybe 100 pages left Totally enjoying that one as well. Stay tuned for more info on that. I don't quite know where it's going yet, but I'm okay with it and I'm excited to find out. So my plan for this weekend is to binge read that. So stay tuned for more on that one, but let me know what you guys are reading or what you read in June or what your favorite book of June is, if you've read any of the books I've talked about, and we can talk about that down below. But thanks for hanging out today, and I will see you guys in another video really soon. Bye everybody.